No, probably not. I've spent yesterday and pretty much all morning today watching reviews for Assassin's Creed Shadows, and the main thing that kind of keeps popping up into my head is that it's a very similar, mediocre Ubisoft experience using the same formula that they've been using for the past decade or more. Some of the most common feedback that I've seen, at least on the content creator side of things in regards to these reviews, is that the gameplay loop is pretty still similar to the modern day Assassin's Creed games and other Ubisoft games as well, albeit doing a lot differently than those games and kind of definitely trying to go in a new direction for people that didn't like the modern Assassin's Creed games. And granted, if you were somebody who likes the Ubisoft formula and likes all Ubisoft games, you might actually enjoy this and it might be more of what you like, and that's good for those type of players. But for me, I have thought that this Ubisoft formula has gotten stale a long time ago, and this is not going to bring me back to getting excited about a Ubisoft game when it's still following the same type of formula as all of the other games. The surveying an area or going on top of a tower, and then you see more of the environment and question mark POIs that you can go and explore, that is just a style that isn't interesting to me anymore, or interesting to a lot of different gamers anymore. And genuinely, I do believe that this type of formula that Ubisoft keeps employing is keeping any of their games from becoming something truly great or getting over that mediocre mark of 5 through 8 in the ratings. Because no matter how beautiful the world is, how polished the game is, how visceral and good the stealth combat in general is, which these are all things we have heard about Shadows in these reviews, it's not going to, at least for me, supersede the overall gameplay loop that I personally feel has gotten stale. But I do want to talk about these review scores specifically, as well as the big difference between the gaming journalists and the content creator side of things, because something that I'm seeing and what this is reminiscent of to me is Dragon Age the Veilguard and when those reviews started coming out. And I think we're going to see this a lot going forward because there's a lot of studios right now, like Bioware, like Ubisoft, like even Bethesda, for example, that used to be at the pinnacle of gaming. And over the past 10 years or so, even more a little bit, they have continuously declined in regards to what players have felt about them and their games. These companies have grown so much, almost too big to succeed and take the same amount of risks that they used to do way back in the day. And there's always going to be fans, even me in a lot of ways, that are hopeful and excited for their new game and hoping it's going to be that studio's quote-unquote return to form. And sometimes I think we need to sit back and just realize the directors and people running these games are completely different people 99% of the time. The entire development studio and the entire multiple teams now that are working on these games, hundreds and hundreds of people, these are not the same people who made the games we used to know and love. These companies are reliant on making money now, more than they are reliant on making good games. They have shareholders who are depending on them to pretty much make a game with the most mass appeal as possible to casual gamers that aren't necessarily diehard hardcore gamers that want more from these games. But regardless, gaming journalists out there are going to try to propel that narrative that every new game from these studios is their return to form, when that just is almost impossible at this point with the actual goals that these companies have now and how big their teams are and how different their teams are versus when they were making games back in the day. And right there is really where I'm seeing the complete similarities between the Dragon Age Veilguard review cycle and this one for Assassin's Creed Shadows. But before we get into that discussion and look at what this game has been doing out on the internet in regards to its reviews, thank you guys so much for over 1,000 subscribers on the road to 2,000. If you are new to the channel and you like gaming news, gaming reviews, specifically with RPGs, but other games that I'm interested in as well, and you like the video that you see here, please like and subscribe. Now let's get into the video. Now jumping right into the Metacritic scores here, and before I even do, I do want to say all of these gaming publications, if you don't know, have a direct incentive to give any game, even Shadows, a higher score than it probably deserves, because on a monetary basis, they are making money on their site from ads. And if they don't have search traffic because they're not getting these review copies early and publishing articles during these different review cycles, they are not going to have that search traffic to have other companies put ads on their site, then in turn make money, pay their writers, and continue on from there and continue on the publication. So they have a direct incentive to be giving games a better score than they deserve, and that's always why you're going to see a higher Metascore than you're probably going to hear content creators talk about that game on YouTube. Granted, they have their own inherent biases as well, but that's basically always the rule of thumb for me, that the Metascore is usually higher than the game actually deserves. Not in every case, but in a lot of cases, they want to keep getting those review copies. However, they are sitting right now, or Assassin's Creed Shadows is sitting at an 81 on Metacritic. Let's go back and look at Odyssey, 83. Let's go back and look at Valhalla, 80. This is Ubisoft's comfort zone. They don't want to risk and make a game that is potentially going to be way better than this, because they could fumble the bag and get a lot worse. They are in their comfort zone. This is exactly what they wanted. Now let's look at the narratives being pushed for this game that goes exactly what I was talking about earlier with these studios, that people are just hopeful that they're going to release a game that was as good as Assassin's Creed Black Flag, or that was as good as Mass Effect 3 or Oblivion, Skyrim, and Morrowind, or Fallout 3. This is what they're going to be doing every single time, and I'm going to relate this to Dragon Age the Veilguard here in a second, but look at this. Assassin's Creed Shadows review, a feudal return to form. One of the most polished, elegant, and all-around best games the franchise has ever seen. Assassin's Creed Shadows scores make me hopeful Ubisoft's returned to form. One of the best games of 2025, return to form for the sneaky, stabby franchise. A new era for stealth gaming. I think Assassin's Creed Shadows may truly be a return to form for Ubisoft, and I haven't even finished it. And this is all on the first page here for me. Now let's take a look at Dragon Age the Veilguard, because a lot of these Shadows reviews are very reminiscent of what we saw for Veilguard, and even what we saw sometimes for Starfield as well, which are all those big companies that people are just begging and hopeful that they are quote-unquote returning to form from the good old days, which, like I mentioned, is borderline impossible at this point. But let's take a look. Dragon Age the Veilguard is Bioware's triumphant return. Basically return to form. They just don't use those words exactly, but right here they do. Dragon Age the Veilguard, return to form. Totally inconsistent Dragon Age the Veilguard is still Bioware's best action game. Okay, not necessarily the same there. Dragon Age the Veilguard review, maybe Bioware's best fantasy RPG. What are we talking about here? Do we forget that Bioware made Dragon Age Origins one of the best fantasy RPGs of all time? Dragon Age looks better, plays better than ever in the Veilguard. What are we doing here? And of course, if you do look at their Metacritic, they're sitting right there in that very comfortable 82, almost identical to Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, with all that being said, if you go on the actual content creator side, people that, yes, they do have a bias, but they don't have as much of an incentive to give these games an incredible score, you're going to see a much more balanced narrative there and a much more balanced perspective, albeit relatively positive from a lot of the reviewers out there, while some others are kind of saying what I said at the start of the video, that they are just not necessarily interested in the game because of how Ubisofty it is, and regardless of the changes that they made specifically to the franchise, they can't fix that overall gameplay loop that they employ in every single one of their games.
I represent a lot of the Ubisoft fan base that wants to get back into their games, and if I can be won over, then that is a good sign for many of you out there. After 15 hours, I am not playing more AC Shadows. Not because it is an awful game, although I think a lot of people will take it that way, but really because I've played this game before.
For me, I was kind of going back and forth between a buy on sale and a do not recommend for this one. And that's largely because I don't think everything about this game is awful, but I also just didn't really enjoy the bulk of it either. And ultimately, for that reason, and the fact that I think some of the core things it's trying to do just don't really work for me, I'm gonna give it a don't recommend.
I went into it fairly skeptically after a preview event I attended in January, which left me conflicted. Ubisoft has made a bunch of changes with AC Shadows Shadows from recent AC games like Valhalla, Odyssey, and Origins, which I really appreciate considering I really did not like AC Valhalla, but I do think it's important to note that they have very intentionally gone a different route with this game. It is not Valhalla 2. Thank God. That being said, at the preview event, it became clear to me that they had made a lot of cuts from those previous AC games, some of which seemed like good things that they were cutting. Things like torches, the ability to hunt, or even something as simple as the ability to toggle from day to night or night to day. All of that was removed. Add on top of that, the concern with recent inconsistencies in Ubisoft's releases when it comes to quality and polish, and I really wasn't sure what I was in for with AC Shadows. But what we ended up getting was a game that's very, very polished, is beautifully presented with a truly next-generation recreation of Japan, all wrapped up in an Assassin's Creed game that feels markedly different from its predecessors, in many good ways, and in a couple ways that I would change.
So those are just a couple examples there. As you can see, there's some people that are bored of the formula, don't want to continue to do it. There's others that didn't like the more modern Assassin's Creed games that actually like this one a little bit better because of the specific changes within the franchise and them trying to go in a different direction. But in general, nobody's, at least from what I've seen so far and what I've watched, saying that this game is a return to form. I've watched a lot of other ones as well, like Fextra Life and Skill Up, and tons of different reviews about Assassin's Creed Shadows at this point. Go check them out. I don't want to spoil everything that these content creators are saying about the game, but it's a much more balanced perspective than what we're seeing from these publications, which is exactly what we saw with Dragon Age the Veilguard in that entire review cycle. Now, in general, what I've mainly heard about this game and kind of my conclusions and my final thoughts after watching these reviews, reading these reviews, and kind of trying to come to a middle ground myself in terms of what I think you can expect when playing this game, I think you can expect beautiful environments, a very polished game, much more polished than some of the previous games Ubisoft and specifically within their Assassin's Creed franchise has been. On top of this, probably really good combat, specifically with the stealth combat using Naue, but a very inconsistent narrative and not the greatest characters, and from what I've seen, some really bad voice acting.
Resentment can grow quietly without much warning after a storm. Mushrooms can too. Shiitake?
But all of this being wrapped up with that same overarching Ubisoft gameplay loop that they've used consistently time and time again. So if you're somebody that does enjoy that gameplay, if you're somebody that really prioritizes combat being your main thing to propel you from start to finish in a game, and you don't really care about the narrative, the lore, the story, the characters, and things like that, I think this game is going to be really fun for you, especially because of how polished this game seems to be. But if you are somebody that has grown stale of the gameplay loop like I have, and somebody that does really prioritize the narrative, characters, and the story, and that's what propels you in the game, and you prioritize that more than the combat, I think you're probably not going to love this game and not really get your money's worth. But I would love to hear down below in the comments what you guys think about all of these reviews. Do you guys think they're looking relatively positive, and do you think this game looks like something you're going to have a lot of fun with or not, and why? I would love to hear that down below. Thank you guys again for watching the video. If you are new to the channel and you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!